Imagine biting into a raw, bloody piece of meat right now. No fire, no seasoning, no plate, just you, your teeth, and a chunk of muscle still warm from the animal it came from. Your stomach would probably turn. Your jaw would ache after a few minutes of chewing. And here's the wild part. Even if you managed to eat it, your body wouldn't get nearly as much energy from it as you'd think. For millions of years, this was just dinner. Every single meal. No stove, no spices, no warm soup on a cold night. So what changed? Why did our ancestors start throwing food into fire, of all things? And why did that one decision end up shaping literally everything about who we are today? Our brains, our faces, our social lives, even the way we fall in love over a dinner table. Let's go back, way back. Picture Africa, more than 2 million years ago. Small groups of early humans are wandering across grasslands, dodging lions, digging up roots, and cracking open bones to get at the marrow inside. Life is hard, food is scarce, and almost everything they eat is raw. Raw meat is tough, really tough. Chewing through it takes forever. Some researchers think early humans may have spent up to 5 or 6 hours a day just chewing their food. Think about that. That's like a part-time job, except the only task is grinding tough fibers between your teeth until your jaw gives out. Raw plants aren't much better. Roots, stems, and tubers are often full of tough fibers and natural toxins that the body can barely break down. Your gut has to work overtime just to pull out a fraction of the calories hiding inside. And calories, back then, were everything. There was no fridge, no grocery store, no backup meal if today's hunt failed. Every bit of energy mattered, and raw food was stingy with it. Here's where it gets strange, though. At some point, something happened that changed the entire game. Nobody knows exactly when or where the very first fire was tamed on purpose, but scientists have found burnt bones and ash layers at a cave in South Africa called Wonderwork Cave, dating back around 1 million years. That's some of the oldest solid evidence we have of humans controlling fire. And once fire enters the picture, everything starts to shift. Cooking does something almost magical to food. Heat breaks down tough proteins in meat, making them easier to chew and easier to digest. It softens plant fibers, unlocking calories that would otherwise pass right through the body unused. In some studies, cooked meat gave test subjects significantly more usable energy than the exact same amount of raw meat. Same food, same weight, way more fuel, just because it had been heated. Scientists have actually tested this in a strange but clever way, by feeding mice raw versus cooked meat and sweet potatoes, then watching how much weight they gained. The mice that ate cooked food gained noticeably more weight than the ones eating raw food, even though they were eating the same amount. Cooking, it turns out, is basically pre-digestion. Fire does part of the work your stomach used to have to do alone. Now here's the part that should blow your mind a little. There's a theory, a pretty famous one in anthropology, called the cooking hypothesis, championed by primatologist Richard Wrangham. His idea is bold. Cooking didn't just make life easier for early humans. It might have been the spark that grew our brains. Think about it this way. The brain is an incredibly expensive organ to run. In humans, it eats up about 20% of our total daily energy, even though it's only about 2% of our body weight. That's an enormous amount of fuel for one organ. Raw food diets simply can't support that kind of energy demand. Not easily anyway. But cooked food? Cooked food is energy-dense and easy to digest. Suddenly there's extra fuel available. Extra fuel that a growing, greedy brain could actually use. Around the time researchers believe cooking became more common, we also see the beginnings of a dramatic increase in brain size in the human lineage. Now, scientists debate the exact timeline and how directly connected these two things are. It's not a case of cooking equals instant big brain, but many researchers agree that cooked food was likely one of the key ingredients that made a bigger, hungrier brain possible in the first place. But brains weren't the only thing that changed. Take a look at your own teeth for a second. Go ahead, run your tongue along them. Pretty small, right? Pretty flat? Compare that to a chimpanzee's mouth. Huge molars, a jaw built like a nutcracker, designed for hours of grinding tough raw plants. Our jaws, by comparison, are small and weak. Our teeth are modest. Our guts are shorter and less powerful than you'd expect for a large mammal. Here's the strange part. That shouldn't work. A creature with tiny teeth and a small gut should struggle to survive on wild, raw food. Unless, of course, that creature had already found a way to make food easier to eat and easier to digest before it even entered the mouth. Cooking did that job. It became an outside stomach, breaking down food before biology had to. Once cooking entered the picture, natural selection didn't need to keep investing in giant jaws and grinding teeth. Evolution basically said, we don't need this anymore. And over generations, our faces got smaller, flatter, and gentler. Things get even more interesting when you look at how cooking changed the way early humans lived together, not just what they ate. Raw food doesn't really invite sharing. Chewing through tough meat for hours is a solo mission. But cooked food takes time to prepare. It often means gathering around a fire, waiting for meat to roast, watching it, tending it. And waiting around a fire together does something to a group of primates. It creates downtime. Downtime for talking, for teaching, for bonding. Some anthropologists believe the campfire may have been one of the very first social hubs in human history, a nightly gathering point that shaped the beginnings of language, storytelling, and cooperation. Fire also brought something else early humans desperately needed: safety. A fire at the edge of camp kept predators at bay during the night. For a species without claws, without thick fur, and without particularly powerful teeth, that mattered enormously. Groups that controlled fire could sleep more safely, which meant better rest, which meant sharper thinking the next day. Cooking changed hunting too, in a sneaky sort of way. Since cooked meat provided more usable energy, hunters could go longer distances, chase prey for longer, and still have enough fuel left to make it home. Cooking essentially gave early humans better mileage per meal, like upgrading from a leaky old engine to a more efficient one. Now, here's a fun fact that tends to surprise people. Cooking didn't just apply to meat. Some of the earliest and most important cooked foods may have actually been starchy plants, roots and tubers. Raw starch is almost impossible for the human body to break down efficiently. But cook it, and something interesting happens at a molecular level. The heat causes the starch structure to change shape, making it dramatically easier for our digestive enzymes to access and absorb. Some researchers argue that cooked starches, not just cooked meat, may have played a massive role in feeding the energy-hungry human brain. Scientists studying human DNA actually found something that backs this up. Humans carry extra copies of a gene called AMY1, which helps our saliva break down starch. Compared to some of our primate relatives, we have far more copies of this gene. That's a strong clue that starchy, and likely cooked, food became a bigger and bigger part of the human diet over time. But let's rewind for a second, because there's a giant question we haven't answered yet. How did early humans even discover cooking in the first place? It's not like someone woke up one day and thought, you know what would be great? Setting my dinner on fire. The truth is, nobody knows for certain, and there probably wasn't a single dramatic aha moment. The most likely explanation is much more accidental than that. Wildfires happen naturally. Lightning strikes dry grasslands, forests catch fire, and animals sometimes get caught in the blaze. Early humans, scavenging through burned landscapes afterward, may have stumbled across roasted animal carcasses. And here's the thing, roasted meat probably smelled incredible. Better yet, it was easier to chew and, unknowingly to them, packed more usable energy. Over countless generations, this discovery likely happened again and again in different places, until at some point, some clever early humans figured out how to capture fire, keep it burning, and eventually create it on demand, rather than waiting for lightning to do the job. Once that leap happened, there was no going back. By around 400,000 years ago, we start finding much stronger, widespread evidence of controlled fire use across multiple sites in Europe and the Middle East. Hearths, ash deposits, and burnt animal bones, clustered together in patterns that don't happen naturally. This suggests fire had become a regular, deliberate part of daily life, not just an occasional lucky find. And here's something that scientists discovered that genuinely surprised a lot of people. Cooking may have also played a role in human safety in a completely different way, by killing off dangerous parasites and bacteria hiding in raw meat. Raw meat can carry all sorts of nasty organisms, parasites, harmful bacteria, and other microscopic threats that can cause serious illness or even death. Cooking meat at high enough temperatures kills most of these threats before they ever reach your gut. In a world without hospitals, without antibiotics, without any modern medicine whatsoever, avoiding a deadly infection wasn't a small bonus. It could be the difference between surviving to have children or not. In other words, cooking wasn't just about taste or energy. It may have quietly saved countless lives simply by making food safer. Let's throw in a few more fun facts before we get to the big picture, because honestly, this topic is full of them. Fun fact: chimpanzees, our closest living relatives, have been observed showing a preference for cooked food over raw food in controlled experiments, even though they've never cooked anything themselves in the wild. Researchers gave captive chimps a choice between raw and cooked sweet potato and meat, and again, they picked the cooked option. That suggests a preference for cooked food might run surprisingly deep in the primate brain, not just the human one. Fun fact: some scientists believe cooking may have influenced not just our brains and jaws, but our guts specifically. The human digestive tract is notably shorter and less energy-hungry than you'd expect for a primate our size. Since cooked food is easier to break down, we may not have needed such a large, calorie-burning gut anymore. Less gut, more brain. A trade some researchers call the expensive tissue hypothesis. Fun fact: early hearths weren't just for cooking. Archaeologists have found evidence that ancient fires were also used to harden wooden spear tips, keep insects away, and provide light for tasks after dark, essentially stretching the usable hours in a day. So, after all of this, here's the big question worth sitting with. Cooking feels like such a small, ordinary thing today. You press a button on a microwave, you flip a switch on a stove. Nobody thinks twice about it. But strip that away, and you start to see how enormous this decision really was for our ancestors. A choice to hold food over flame may have reshaped our teeth, shrunk our jaws, fed our expanding brains, pulled us together around shared fires at night, protected us from deadly parasites, and helped stretch our legs farther on the hunt. It's strange to think that something as simple as fire and food might be one of the biggest reasons you're capable of reading this sentence right now, with a brain built partly on millions of years of warm meals. So here's something to think about the next time you're waiting for dinner to finish cooking. If a single decision to heat food over fire could push evolution in a brand new direction, what other everyday habits are quietly shaping what humans become next?